So what our agenda for today is we'll just give you a bit of an overview of the solutions that our company provides, and then we'll sort of focus on the two main topics for today, so the paperless AP and then the key communication solutions. So for each of those, we'll just run through the key features and the benefits, and then we'll do a quick demonstration of the software. Okay, so just a bit of background about our company. So we're located in Hamilton in New Zealand, and we're a Sage 300 development partner. So we're just focused purely on Sage 300, and we've been doing that for over 15 years. And we've been attending the major Sage 300 conferences around the world for a number of years now. I'm in Dubai at the moment, so we're just in Sage Middle East. I've had an event yesterday. And also a few years ago we won an award for the top development partner in the Australia Pacific region. Okay, so just a bit of an overview of our solutions, just so that you're aware of sort of the different solutions that we have. So they fall into sort of two categories. So the first category is workflow solutions. So, and within that, the first one is payables workflow, which is the paperless AP, the invoice approval module. Then we also have a procurement solution, so that's the whole requisitioning and approvals and budget checking process. And then the third module we have is it provides workflows within a lot of areas within Sage 300. And so I've just put a few examples there. So one of them is master data, where you can you have workflows on your customers and your vendors, for example, and so you can have a workflow when someone adds a new vendor that can go to the finance manager for an approval, or if someone changes key vendor fields, then that can also go for an approval. And also on transactions, you can have workflows on some of your main transactions like general ledger journals and AR credit notes. Right, and then so those are the workflow solutions that we provide, and then we've got some other modules that we sort of categorise under control and compliance solutions, and so one of those is key communications, and so we'll be looking at that one today. Then we've also got a module audit logger, so that keeps a log of who makes changes to the data within Sage. And then our newest module is advanced stock taking, and so this provides sort of a more powerful stock taking facility for Sage 300. Okay, and now, so this diagram here just sort of shows the three workflow modules. So you can see in the three blue boxes there, we've got purchasing workflow first of all, then in the middle is payables workflow that we'll be looking at today, and then on the right hand side, workflow notifications. And below those, there's a blue box, document attachments. So this is the workflow documents module. So this, with the purchasing workflow, you can attach your quotes from your suppliers, whether it's PDF or Word or Excel or even most other formats. But with payables workflow, that's the workflow documents lets you attach your invoice image to your transaction within Sage. Right, and then up above the top there is a grey box, which is web connected services. So for all of the three workflow modules, you can do the approvals through a web interface, and so this is quite a key requirement for managers to be able to do their approvals. So instead of logging into Sage 300 to approve an invoice, they can approve it from a browser or from a smartphone. Okay, and now this next diagram shows this procure to pay business process. So you can see in the 6 green boxes, they're the 6 different parts or steps within the whole process, from setting up a new vendor and vendor catalogues in terms of buying prices, purchase requisitions is the next one, then purchase orders, PO receipts, supplier invoices, supplier payments. And so what we just want to show with this is the next row down, the blue boxes. You can see we've got the first three are covered by workflows. Then for receiving, we can block over receiving. We don't have a workflow at this stage, but we can block over receiving. And then we've got workflows on the supplier invoice and the supplier payment. So really, we think the end-to-end procure-to-pay business process can be tightly controlled with Sage 300 and with our solutions. Okay, so now this next slide shows the PW web system, and so it's a connected service. And so what that means is that it's available from the web, but the data sits only in your Sage 300 system. So someone on the left-hand side, this is the example on the purchasing side, so people can actually create requisitions through the web interface. When they submit those, that communicates to our server infrastructure that's located in Melbourne, and that then communicates with your Sage 300 system using web services. And it's all real time as well. And so all the workflow processing is done on the server, and the email notifications are generated on the server. And so this person on the bottom left, whether they're approving a requisition or if they're approving an invoice that's been routed to them, they will get an email and they can do the approval from a PC browser or from a tablet or from a smartphone. But just I guess one really key thing that we want to emphasize here is that we do not store any of the client's transaction or financial data on our servers, so that data stays only in your Sage 300 system. All right, and just in terms of our customer base, so as Workflow Solutions, we've sort of been around for, I think, about over 13 years now, and so we've got quite a broad customer base around the world, so over 800 customers around the world. And in Australia is probably one of our sort of most successful markets in terms of penetration. So we've got over 120 customers, and so you can see we've just listed some of the customers there, so in different regions in Australia, Pacific, and other regions around the world. And down below there is under PW Web Clients. So we've got some, quite, just companies that are spread out throughout Australia, which is where the whole web interface, can be really valuable. All right, and just one last thing is I'm wanting to just emphasise some of the differences between our workflow solutions and other workflow solutions. So quite often we hear customers saying, or when they're talking about workflow solutions, they talk about quite significant money or values like, $40,000 or upwards. And so our solutions are sort of much lower cost than that. But I guess the key thing is they're all inside Sage 300. So we've developed within the Sage 300 SDK, which means that we use the same tools as the Sage developers use. So that just means it's so much easier for companies like yourselves. If you know Sage 300, you can, a lot of the concepts already apply to our modules. And they're sort of reasonably easy to configure. It's all sort of through the Sage user interface, so you don't have to get into the database like quite a lot of workflow systems. And so easy to configure, but still quite powerful. But the key one is really that third point, reasonably low cost and low risk. So. Okay, so that's sort of just a bit of an overview. So now we will look at the Paperless AP and the AP automation module. So just the key features for what this module provides. So what you can do is you set up your delegated authorities. So in other words, how much people are allowed to approve based on their authority level within the organisation. And then you set up your approval workflows to meet your requirements for approvals. And then the supplier invoices, when they are received, they are entered into the payables workflow module. And we've got the abbreviation there, PA, so that's the prefix for payables workflow. So the invoices are entered into Payables Workflow, and then the invoice image is attached, and so they can be copied across from email. So what we're finding in Australia and New Zealand is a lot of companies now receiving quite a high proportion of their invoices by email. And so what the system allows you to do is just copy from the email and paste it into the Payables Workflow module. And the invoices then get routed electronically. So what a lot of companies will do is have the invoice first go to the cost center manager, and so they'll get an email to say an invoice has been sent to you for you to approve, and then they can click on a link with PW Web to just go to a web approval console. And so you can do your approvals within Sage 300, or you can do them through the web interface. So it's really just it's a matter of what works best for your organisation. And so we've got a number of customers who just have the approvals within Sage 300, and others they do the majority through the web. When the invoice is fully approved, then Payables Workflow pushes it across into either Accounts Payable or PO module, whichever one is appropriate. And then, because it's all within Sage 300, it's sort of got really quite easy to use drill down. So from the GL and from your AP vendor activity, you can drill within sort of, I think, 7 or 8 clicks. You can be looking at the invoice image, and so that's all just comes as part of the solution. Okay, and now another key feature is just for companies that are running the purchase order module is the whole 3-way matching, and so that's provided within Payables Workflow as well. So what that means is when the PO invoice is entered, the system will compare it against the receipt, and then you also set up what are the tolerance values. So you can say, if the invoice is 1% higher than the PO and the receipt, then you're happy with that. Or if it's within $100, you're happy with that. But if it's above those tolerance limits, then the system will work that out and send that invoice off for another approval. Okay, and then in terms of the web and smartphone approvals, so we'll look at this through the software, which would be better than probably me talking about it, so we'll do that in a few minutes. And so, but yeah, the third point there, through the web interface, it only uses one Sage 300 LAN pack, so that makes it much more sort of cost effective. Rather than if the users log into Sage 300 to do their approvals, they're then using a LAN pack, so that adds some more cost. So you only need the one LAN pack for the PW Web. And just reiterating, so no transactional or financial data is stored outside the Sage 300 system. And okay, so now I've just got a couple of screenshots of how the one on the previous slide was the showing the approval console on a PC browser, and then here you can see this is what it looks like on a smartphone, and I'll show you this in a minute as well. So when someone logs in on the smartphone, they can see what approvals are sitting with them, and then if they open up one of those invoices, then that's as it is on the right hand side there, they can see the invoice details, and they can see the link to the invoice image, so they can open that up. All right, so now just sort of, I guess the key thing is really what are the benefits of this Payables Workflow module. So, and we've sort of been given some feedback from a number of customers, and we've sort of tried to summarize them here. So really, I guess the key thing is just the increased efficiency that companies are finding. So this sort of falls into 3 different roles within the organization. First of all, accounts payable are more efficient because they're spending less time sort of chasing paper, and they can also just look up and see where an invoice is, which manager an invoice is sitting with. So that's the AP. Then the managers that are doing the approvals, they're also quite positive about the system, because it's just, they just log in and do their approvals. So it's not like, they've got a big in tray full of paper, or, papers getting lost going around the process. And then the finance people, some of them, what we provide as part of the system is a function where it can just do a reversing accrual journal entry. So for all of the invoices that are still going through the approval process, they haven't hit accounts payable yet. So what we got is a macro that can just go through and do the accrual journal entry. So that can save finance some time there. And also the next thing is the access to the data is much easier. And we've got quite a good example for a client in Australia where they're saying, they've got a storeroom out at the back where all their invoice hard copies are stored, and you guys in Aussie, you've got a few sort of quite dangerous animals over there, like spiders and snakes. So this client was sort of saying, people are a bit reluctant to go out and look up these, dig out the hard copy. So, when it's electronic, then, you can just look at the invoice image from your screen in your office, and you can also look at who approved the invoice. And I think another benefit is just being able to respond to the vendor queries. So if one of your suppliers rings up and says, what's happening with this invoice, it's overdue, then your AP people can, just quite quickly look up the invoice and see which manager it's sitting with. We've had some clients say that they're sort of closing off their accounts a bit quicker, like saving a couple of days, and that's, I think, the main thing is really just the accruals, being able to make that process happen more quickly. Another benefit is obviously the system's paperless, so that's some companies what we're finding is they'll get the invoices might be emailed in, but they're actually then printing them out and sending them out, in hard copy. So with this payables workflow, that whole paper is not used anymore. And then the next thing is you can potentially save costs for storage, or if you're using some storage space, within your office, you can sort of reuse that for, another purpose. But then obviously you do have the cost of the electronic storage and the backup. So, but I think that's normally works out a fair bit lower than the actual physical space. And just another key one down the bottom there is just, a number of customers are sort of just saying, well, the AP people, AP people mainly, but also the managers, just saying, quite positive about the system. It's just sort of, it's easy to use and just makes them, so it's an administrative job. Well, it's a key function, obviously, improving invoices, but, it's just sort of means people can do it more quickly. Okay, so now that's enough of the PowerPoint. So now we'll have a look at the software itself. So, so I'll log into our Sage 300 system here. So this is version 6.2, so it's a little bit of an older version. Some of you might be on a more recent version, but you can see here payables workflow. It's sitting within the Sage desktop, so it looks and feels like a Sage module. And so if we look at the setup, there's some areas, obviously you need to set up the authority levels within your organisation, and you then need to set up the users that will be using payables workflow. So that's pretty straightforward. And then the cost centres, so they're normally like your departments, and quite often they'll match up to your segments within your general ledger. But what I was just wanting to look at now is the workflows, just to show you a little bit about this because it's quite important. So here we've got a workflow called AP INV, and you can see down here, so it says the first step is step 10, and so that means when AP put an invoice and put it into this workflow, the system will send it to the cost center manager. So the system works out who's the cost center manager. Then if they approve it, then it will go to step 20, which is check whether it's below $5,000. If it's below $5,000, then it goes straight across to accounts payable. But if it's above $5,000, then it will go to the controller for the second approval. So the workflow, we'll use this workflow when we put through an invoice. So first of all, cost center manager, the one we'll do will be over $5,000, so it'll go to the controller for the second approval. So now we'll look, so I was logged in as AP anyway. So normally AP probably wouldn't have access to all of this configuration. So they will come into PA transactions, and then we've got the two invoice entry screens here. So we've got AP invoice entry and PO invoice entry. And they're really, as you'll see, are very similar to the Sage screens. So if we come in and do an AP invoice, now, I guess one key difference that you'll notice is that this is not batch-based. So Sage at 300 accounts payable is all batch-based. And when we were designing this module, we thought it was more appropriate for it to be just on a one-by-one basis. So as an invoice comes to accounts payable, they enter the invoice in, send it off to the workflow, and then they deal with the next invoice, put that in and send that through the workflow. And so, and you'll see there's two fields here, which are the extra fields over and above what's in accounts payable. So the first one is the workflow, so it's defaulted to the workflow that we're looking at just before, API&B. And then this next field is the cost center. So this is now shows you all of the different cost centers that are available within your organization. Then from there down, the fields are basically the same as accounts payable. So it's just a few differences at the top there. And what I should do is just change it to 2020 because the Sage sample data is in the year 2020. And so we have our invoice value, and then we can put in our line values. So let's split it over two lines. And then to attach the invoice image, you then go to this workflow documents module, and there's a few different ways that you can use this. The first one is you can click on the attach button and navigate to the invoice that's saved somewhere on your network. So that's, I guess, one way, but what a lot of customers are finding is really that accounts payable will just have their Outlook open on the right-hand side and just copy. So copy from the email and paste in here. So that means it doesn't have to get saved on your network. Okay, so now we're happy with that invoice. So we now submit it into the workflow. And so what the system's now doing is determining who is the manager of that cost center, and it is then sending off an email to that manager to say they've got an invoice to be approved. And I'll just check my emails. Yes, now I haven't, oh, there we go. Oh, right, excellent. That was one thing I hadn't quite checked. So here it's sent through the email. So it's saying, please review this invoice and approval decline. It's got the invoice number, the value, the description, who the vendor name is, and it's got the image attached to the invoice as well. So we could open that up. And then you can see if you have the PW Web interface for the Web Connected service, then you can also put in this URL. So what I will do is just copy that across to my local machine and hit paste and go. So this is effectively what you would see. So this is now sent it to the division manager, who's the manager of that cost center, and they would then log into PW Web. Now this is a little bit slower than what, so because I'm in Dubai, it's having to connect back to New Zealand and then sort of present the data back to me over here. And so that's the PW approval console, as if there's any requisitions that we want to approve, but we're interested in the PA approval console, which is any invoices. And then we can see, so that shows us all the invoices that are sitting with us, and you can see our one down here, 170816 AP-001. So what this manager can do is click on that. So the first thing they normally want to do is look at the invoice image. Well, they can open it up and that shows the GL coding. Then they can look at the invoice image here, so they can just click on that and that opens that up within the browser. And now another question is, do you want the managers to do approvals or not? And so that's configurable. And so if they can make changes, then they'll see this pencil on the right-hand side. So that means they can edit it. But there's limited fields that they can edit, and you can control which fields as well. So a lot of companies will say they want the managers to approve the GL. They can change the GL coding, but maybe that's all they can change. All right, so that was just the viewing it through the normal screen, so that's through a PC or from a tablet. But just to show you what it would look like on a smartphone. So now what it does, because it's less real estate, so obviously it just needs to present some summarised information. So now it's showing this person that they've got 7 AP invoices to approve, 4 PO invoices and 1 purchase requisition. So if they click on the AP invoices, that now presents that same list that we were looking at just before, but it's actually sorted in reverse order, so the newest at the top, so that's our one there. So we can click on that and open it up. And there it shows us the GL coding, and then we can look at the image again on the phone. So there it is there. And then we can either approve it or decline it, so let's approve that. And so now what the PW Web is doing is sending back to the payables workflow on the Sage server saying that user has approved that invoice, and so payables workflow is now moving it along through the approval process. And so if you remember, the second approver was the controller. So that was the first approval that's been done by the division manager. So now the controller, they'll normally be within Sage 300, so they can do their approvals within Sage 300. So they come to PA transactions, approval console. And then that shows them what they need to approve. So there's our one there. So you can do the same sort of thing within the desktop. You can look at the image, and if you've been given the rights, then you can edit the GL coding. And let's just say we're happy with that one, and we'll post that. So because that's the last approval, PA has now pushed it over into accounts payable, so we can go and see that sitting here in a batch. So you can see it's got a special type or application called payables workflow. So now what we do is we've locked it down, so you cannot actually edit it at all in accounts payable, because that sort of defeats the whole purpose of having the payables workflow system. So all we can do is post that, which pushes it across to GL, and then let's just post it in here. And so now what we can just show you is the drilling. So if we, let's say the finance manager's looking at the GL at the end of the month to see if everything looks correct or not, and so they can look at this account and see it's got a large value, so they look at the transactions and they can go to the bottom and there they see there's a large one there, $8,300, so that's our invoice. So they want to know what that is. So within Sage you can double click to open the GL journal entry, and then standard Sage is to click again to go to the AP invoice entry. So with payables workflow you get another drilling option. So this now takes you to the payables workflow invoice entry screen, and then you can just look at the image from there. So I think, yeah, that's about 8 clicks, you know, from the GL transactions to looking at the invoice image. And likewise, so what we've done with, we've also provided a vendor activity screen. So this is based on the AP vendor activity screen, but what we've done is just added one more tab, which is workflow documents. So because the invoices are going through payables workflow, so they haven't hit accounts payable, but you still obviously want visibility of them. So that's what this screen shows you, is all of the invoices, even the ones that haven't hit accounts payable yet. And so you can see any ones with a value in this column, next actioner, that means it's sitting on with someone on their approval console. So you know, those are ones that haven't hit accounts payable yet. And so we can see our one at the bottom here, so we can, again, we can double click and look at that, and we can come and look at the event log, and this is something that auditors quite often want to look at. So it keeps a record here of the date and the time, so who approved it, what date, what time, and any comments they put in. All right, so that's the inquiry side of it. And then just the GL journal entry. So this is this macro here. And so we're just doing quite a few features which have just been finished yesterday in terms of cut-off dates and things. So just by doing that, it's now sort of looked at all the invoices going through the approval process, picked up the GL codes and done a reversing general ledger journal entry for that. All right, so I think that was just a real quick look through, and then on the PO invoice side, I probably don't really have time to go through that too much, but one thing that I can show you is just for those of you that are running the PO module, you can just see there's some extra fields on the end here with Payables Workflow where it calculates the variance percentage. So this is the variance of the invoice to the PO and to the receipt. And so this is how the system is working out, you know, does this invoice, you know, exceed the tolerance limits and therefore need an approval. And then we've also got an overdue emailer. So I guess one issue is, you know, some managers might not do their approvals within time, and within the time they should do. So Payables Workflow tracks how many days each manager's got to do their approval. This one's not a very good, well, some of these guys aren't very good because that's 2,100 days overdue and 1,400 days overdue. So what this lets you do is you can just sort of toggle this, and you can just send up reminder emails to the managers to say, you know, hurry up and do your approvals. All right, so now if we go back to our PowerPoint. Now, I guess one other part of the Payables Workflow, or another option that has become available that we've been working on and is just recently available, is what we call document processing service. So probably quite a few of you have been or heard of the whole sort of OCR side of things, and that's been available for quite a number of years, but it's normally, I think the photocopier companies have been selling solutions, and again, you know, the costs that we've heard are quite significant. So I guess this solution that we're providing is it's using a cloud service, and it's actually using, I guess, the next generation of technology to extract the data. So it means it's you know, yeah, it just makes it much more cost effective. So you know, to do the data extraction. And so what that means is an invoice would get sent into a mailbox of yours, and then that would get sent into our DPS system, which extracts the data, creates the transaction within Payables workflow with the image attached, and then you can then just go and check that, and then if it's all okay, just push it into the workflow. So it sort of takes a few minutes to demonstrate that, because you know, it's just something that we need to, you know, push it into the system and then wait for about 5 minutes while it processes it. So I haven't got that set up for today, but if any of you are interested, then we can certainly arrange that along with MicroChannel to show you how that works. I guess this is quite a new area, and you know, well, I never like sort of over-promising and under-delivering. So, you know, we're always, and I believe MicroChannel also are quite cautious about this area. You know, if people have sort of oversold it in the past, but we think now with this new third-generation technology, it is becoming quite a realistic option for extracting AP data. Okay, so that's really the Payables workflow module. So now if we move along to the key communications module, which again is all about sort of handling documents electronically. So the key concepts within a key communication. So it's a module to handle emailing of documents from ACPAC or Sage 300. And so Sage 300 has some facilities to email documents, and they work fine for a lot of organisations, but some organisations want a bit more functionality, and that's where key communications comes in. So one of the key things is that you can set up multiple contacts against each customer and each vendor. So what we're finding is some companies might want the invoices might be going to 2 or 3 different people, and then the statements should go to an accounts mailbox. And so with key communications, you can set up each of those contacts, and then you flag for each contact which documents are to be sent to them. So that's the setup part of it. And then the next part is the emailer programs. And so we provide 8 emailer programs. So that's, you know, what they're listed there. So AR invoices, AR statements, etc., etc. And then the system uses SMTP emailing, so it's all server-based. So that's something we've done with our emailing since 2004, is always used SMTP, because we've, you know, it's just much more robust to do it all at a server level rather than through a mail client. And so it supports Gmail and Office 365 as well. And another thing, the email messages can contain quite meaningful data, and also you can name the PDF much, I guess, better than with Sage 300. So with key communications, your invoice PDF can have a file name which is actually the invoice number. So that's much more user-friendly for your customer that you're sending it to. And then the last point there, you can preview the emails and what the document's going to look like before it goes out. So that's quite important to that whole preview facility, we think. Now it's also got a queuing facility, so that's quite useful because it just gives you a chance to sort of catch any issues before they go out, and also some companies like to just send out their invoices and their statements at a certain time of the day, so that's another reason for using the queue. So we'll look at that as well. And then the last part is, well, the document log. So key communications, it keeps a record within Sage 300 of all the documents that have been emailed out. So you can just quite easily come and look up a certain customer and see, you know, when was the invoice sent to them and who was it sent to, and that sort of thing. Right, and then we've also got a facility for custom emailers, and so a good example is with the Service Manager system that's developed up in Queensland, so that's really powerful maintenance management system and job costing system. So a number of customers want to be able to use key communications to send out their service manager invoices and credit notes. So that's something that we've utilised our custom form system. So that's all supported. Right, and the benefits, I guess really, I think you'll see shortly, but what we've got is these pre-processing grids, so you can actually see what's going to get emailed out before it gets emailed out. So, it gives you a chance to, just not send out something that you don't want to. So that's sort of a key benefit over the Sage emailing. And easy access to what was emailed. And the last one, or bullet point there, less surprises, so lower stress, higher job satisfaction. We had one customer in South Africa where before they had KC, they sent out the statements 3 times by mistake, and I think the staff were quite embarrassed, because it wasn't really sort of the professional image that they were wanting to portray. Okay, so now just a quick demonstration. So I'm sort of running slightly over my time, so I've got about 3 minutes, so we'll go through it pretty quickly. So here I'm using Sage 300 on my desktop of my notebook. So if I come into key communications, it sits under common services, and the key field here is document processing. So here you set up what are the documents that you want key communications to handle. You say what email address does it come from, and here's how you name the email attachment. So here, this is what I was saying before. In this case, the PDF will be the actual invoice number. And here I've got the queuing set up as well, so which we'll look at. Right, so now if we come and look at our customers, you can now see under customer contacts, if we look at customer 1210, you can see we've got 2 people, Jason and Morris here, and then we've got a third one called accounts. So if we look at Jason, we've got his name and his email address and contact details, and then document delivery methods. So this is saying we want to send the AR invoice to Jason and the OE invoice, but not the statement. And Morris is the same. And if we look at accounts, then you can see accounts, we send the statement to accounts. So that's the customer contacts. So now the emailer programs themselves, so they just are sitting within the sort of relevant parts of the Sage modules. So if we look at AR transaction reports, you can see AR invoice, AR receipt. So if we come into AR invoice, so here we just need to select a batch from AR, hit generate list. This is now, there's 2 invoices in this batch, 12 and 13. 12 is going to customer 1210, which is the one that we've set up. So you can see here it's going to send 2 emails, one to Jason and one to Morris. And so we can toggle these on and off if we want to, and we can preview it as well. So that'll actually show us what the crystal report's going to show us, and we can then print and send. And because I've got the queuing set up, you'll see in the right-hand column, it's showing us the status on each line. So let's put those into the queue. So now, so that could be the AR person that's carrying out that role, and then the finance person can come in and come into the queue. That shows all the documents that are sitting there to be sent out, and then you can look at the details. So it'll show you the exact email that's going to go out and the crystal report again, and then we can again deselect, or some of them we can say we don't want to send it, but if we're happy, then we just hit send now, and that sends those out through the email system. So I've got an email server set up on my notebook, so I'll just wait for that. So there are the 3 emails. So there's the 2, so you can see there to Jason. So there's the info, then the email message is all configurable, and the invoice is obviously there, but it's got the the good file name. There's the second one to Morris. Right, so that's the emails that have been sent out, and then the last part of it is then coming and looking in the customer document log. So if we look up 1210, we can just filter, so we can look at all the documents sent out since the start of this month. And so we can see here on the 16th of August that we've got these two, so we can open them up and we can resend as well. So that's a quick look through key communications. So back to our PowerPoint. So really just a very quick summary, because I think I've just finished or used up my time. So with the paperless AP, so I've mentioned these benefits before, but it's just increased efficiency for accounts payable and for the managers doing the approvals and for finance. And it's just easier access to the information. Just within 8 clicks you can be looking at the invoice image and who approved it. So the whole sort of hard copy, retention of paper can sort of be dispensed with. So it's environmentally friendly, and I think a key thing, and AP people can, they're doing less sort of, I guess, jobs that are a bit wasteful or inefficient, so they can be, doing more productive jobs. And so, they just, makes it life a bit more productive. Key communications, again, you can have visibility of what's going to get sent out before it's sent out, so that's important. And also easy access to the information sitting within Sage 300. So again, less surprises, is lower stress and higher job satisfaction.